we've got something special in our glass right now. And we're glad that you have hit play on this YouTube tasting video to hear and see us experience it before you can get your hands on it. Joshua,
Yes.
easy for me to say, we have lived a life with Stones of Stenness releases.
Mm-hmm.
For those new to the nation, and we're seeing new members every single day, thank you for joining us. Stones of Stenness is a little inside reference for us in the nation. And do you still, when you're at tastings, you still talk about parking in the Highlands?
Sometimes I talk about parking in the Highlands. Sometimes I just say hashtag not Scapa. You know, it's all the hints, right? It's like, what else could you do? But
do
yeah,
we
typically I
say
park in the Highlands.
do we say Orkney on this label? We do.
We
This
do.
on the side label it says
Yeah.
distilled. Oh well, why am I talking about the label? Why don't we show the good people? There we are. Stones
There
of
it is.
Stenness. And if you were to keep circling around,
Hold on.
you would see distilled. Joshua needs a hand model for this. Distilled in an Orkney distillery. And then in the bottom there, Islands region. So yes, this is an Orkney distillery. Hashtag not Scapa. And sometimes you have to park in the Highlands to get close to it. If you ever look at a map of Orkney and you look up Stones of Stenness, you'll see that it's somewhat equidistant between two distilleries that exist on that island.
Yep. Yeah, this is
what are we getting?
Well, I mean, first off, this is our fifth Stones of Stenness bottling that we've done to date, which I think is awesome. And you know, this is one of my favorite distilleries, hands down. And I know a lot of people claim this to be their distillery because, you know, especially for those that are maybe a bit earlier on in their journey, and especially when they're dabbling with a bit of smoke, this distillery's own 12-year-old was always the go-to. It was the one that ticked the boxes. Do you get a bit of smoke? Yes.
So many
Do you get a
people.
bit of sweetness? Yes. Do you get a bit of earthiness? Yes. Right? Richness? Yes. And for years, Paul F. Palate would call Highland Park's own 18-year-old the
Yep.
best spirit in the world. Now, I didn't say Highland Park. I only talk about parking in the Highlands. And this is a Stones of Stenness. You know, but here we are. So what do I get? First, what I get is a
legal cease and
16-year-old.
desist notice. Perhaps.
Again,
Question for you. But before we go into the notes here, you said this is our fifth.
Yeah.
So we have done Single Cask Nation online Stones of Stenness in the United States. We have done Stones of Stenness US retail. And round about the time this gets released online, we will have a global Stones of Stenness release.
That's right. That's right. Which is super exciting.
Very exciting. Good for Jess.
You know, what I get with this first and foremost is 16 years in PX sherry. Now the color looks lighter than expected for that statement, but that was the paperwork that we received. 16 years in first fill PX. It could be American oak. It could be just a cask that simply isn't giving as much color as others do. But
I remember when I first heard about this Orkney distillery that was known for its sherry cask maturation and liquid that was beautifully ruby red, and I always thought, oh, European oak, right? Quercus robur, right? I'm on board with this. And then it came out, again, no secrets were being held, it was just information, that a large number of their casks are American oak sherry. And that changes the game, right? When you're used to ruby red and dark fruits, that's often European oak sherry. When you bring American oak sherry to this, you do get a lighter color.
Yep.
You get much less in the way of the dehydrated red fruits that we talk about. And
Yeah.
I think this offering here, certainly on the nose, I get a certain balsamic reduction on it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me is that middle ground between what you expect with European oak sherry and what you get with American oak sherry.
And
HoneyNut Cheerios is another one, right? It gets kind of honeyed.
and with American oak, quite often I get that sort of citrusy pop going on. Sometimes coconut, sometimes a bit of citrus. And with this, I'm getting that citrus note, but there's this heaviness from the sherry. I I, I don't know about you, but I grew up eating Grandma Betty's brisket. She had a famous brisket recipe, and it's that heavy, sweet, meaty quality that you sometimes get with these sherry casks, but then that citrus pop just sort of balances it all out. Like it sort of eliminates that almost oppressive heaviness. It's like, now there is a bit of lightness going on here. It's really nice.
Well, and when you start to speak of meat, to me, that starts to move towards a funkiness. And I
Ah, okay.
think this is a
Oh,
Orkney
oh, oh.
distillery that has had to reprogram there on the
Mhm.
fly. It's an Orkney distillery that has a bit of the funk, right? It's got a little bit of the onions. You know, sometimes we talk about that as the onion bagels, a quality that I'll often get in Lechigs.
Mm,
Um,
mhm,
but the onions are there, and then the other funky part for me is there's this spent match quality on the nose,
mm.
but it's a spent match when somebody has lit a candle in the next room over.
Yeah,
That's the important detail for
yeah,
me. There's
yeah.
enough of it to go, well, that's interesting, or well, that's a little bit funky, but not enough to go, that's rotten eggs, that's
Mm.
disgusting, like that's gone wrong. It's
No, no, no,
not
no.
that. It's a
Oh,
little
hell no.
interesting funk, a little interesting twist.
Yeah, no, it's if anything, it's intriguing, right? These slightly different flavors that help offset, there's a bit of hay going on here. There's a bit
Mm,
of
mhm, mhm.
chipotle pepper going on here. Some of the smoke we mentioned, this distillery is known for having a little bit of smoke. It's not Isla smoke, right? It's that
No, no.
Highland smoke.
Yep.
So it's more like a campfire, like it freshly extinguished campfire with a bit of chipotle and maybe a bag of Funyuns over over on the other side of the campfire. There's a lot going
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah, when we were working on notes with Jess for the global release Stones of Stenness, she talked about heather smoke, and that's
Mm,
really
mhm,
changed kind of how I approach this distillery,
mm.
or even this whiskey. Right, to your point, there is a smoke in there, but it's kind of a heather smoke. It's a fragrant smoke. It's a
Oh,
very pleasant smoke.
you know, I had to take a second sip just to verify. It's chocolate covered raisins,
Mm.
just like up front, that really rich dark chocolate. I'm not talking raisinets here. I'm talking dark chocolate over those raisins going on,
Which which is a PX note, right? There's no
right?
doubt about that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And
Melon, we talked about melon, honeydew
yeah,
melon, about this previously. Um, and then I
again,
was saying this
yeah,
kind of the nose into the palate
yeah,
is a Honey Nut Cheerios kind of experience,
yeah,
right? You get a bit of the grain, but you get a bit of the sweetness that comes together really quite nicely. And it's still quite light, a
yeah,
light influence.
yeah. It's back to what did we say about this distillery and why people are so drawn to it? It's they produce whiskeys that tick all the boxes. There's a bit of this, there's a bit of that, there's a bit of this. And guess what? It's
Yeah.
all in balance. There's nothing that's more than this or more than that. It's all just perfectly, perfectly balanced.
Yeah, yeah. Just very quickly, distilled October 2007, bottled November 2023. 304 bottles of
Mm,
this floating around. So
mhm,
it's a very popular distillery. When we do tastings, when we speak with the nation, this distillery is always in the top five of named distilleries for demand.
mm.
Some nights it's top three. in terms of demand, such a globally solid reputation, and this really shows why.
It's like black tea on the finish, a little bit of peppercorn, a little bit of chocolate coming through again, but then fruit. Back to that fruit coming from the PX. Man, do I love this whiskey.
But so rich, so unctuous,
Yeah.
such a wonderful texture. You know, I know the nation and receiving their Ardnamurkins and their Ardmores, and to some extent the Thornton, are talking about, oh, this is Single Cask Nation. This is the palette, right? For US selections, this is what Jason and Joshua are looking at, right? And I want to say more, but maybe we'll save it for a future One Nation Under Whiskey, because Jess's palette, right, and how you and I bounce off of Jess for the global releases. But that's a future One Nation Under Whiskey. That's not for this tasting video.
Yeah. So listen,
good. Keeps going. Details, please.
I know, right? We want to just keep talking about it. So this whiskey is going to go live with 2 other bottlings Thursday, April 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And it's $170 a bottle for a 16-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey, 16 years in PX from this distillery. That's a pretty damn good price.
Yeah, very happy.
54.5% alcohol. And again, what did you say? 304
Yeah,
bottles?
304 bottles.
Yeah, 304. So there you go. So mark your calendars, because again, this is one of 3 bottlings. And as we mentioned last month in our other 3 tasting videos, month after month after month, we're going to be releasing 3 bottlings. And so we want you to mark your calendars. We're bottling these whiskeys with you in mind. And damn if we're not excited.
Cheers to that, Joshua.
Cheers, big ears.